evening. Welcome to another edition of Drugs, Crime, and Politics, brought to you by the Drug Policy Forum of Texas. I'm your host, Buford Terrell, and with me tonight, our co-host, Bandu Nair, and we have tonight a special treat. We have Michael Daleo, the producer of the award-winning short film, Releaf, which we'll be looking at later in the show. But first, what does the news of the world look like?
There's certainly very many stories out there. Some of the more prominent ones, in case you didn't think the war on drugs was failing. Despite widespread spraying of defoliants in Colombia and Bolivia, the total acreage of coca would be good, but of coca cultivated in Colombia rose by 19%, according to the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. In previous years, when the percentage decreased, they would count that as a win for the war on drugs and say everything we're doing is working. But now they have to answer to the fact that, you know, this percentage has actually risen, more coca is being produced, and so they do attribute it to, rampant excuses here, rapid crop reconstitution and an expansion of the area included in the survey. But as we all know, spraying crops in another country in order to eradicate our drug problems doesn't really work.
Well, we might add to that the admissions that leaked out from the drug czar's office that currently cocaine on the streets in America is at almost a historically low price and a high purity. So once again, it just doesn't seem to be doing much good.
Right. Black markets don't work. Another way that the war on drugs is hurting other countries more than helping, and just a blatant misuse of the law and lack of compassion. This woman in Canada, and I can't remember her name, this is not a first-time case where anyone crossing the border from the U.S. to Canada cannot do so if they've had a previous drug conviction. This woman was going in search of her daughter, who other nonprofit organizations have helped her because her daughter has been basically sold into slavery in the human trade,
for prostitution.
Yeah, for prostitution, the human trade circle, I guess. So she was denied access to crossing the border, even though previously she had been in order to find her daughter. And she was denied on a conviction that is 20 years old from 1986.
Well, along that same line, once again, a month or so ago, a well-noted Canadian medical researcher was denied entry to attend a medical conference in the United States because in his published writings doing research with LSD, published in refereed journals, he admitted to having used LSD himself in the 1950s when the drug was legal in both the United States and Canada. So.
Yeah, the drug wasn't even illegal at the time, but admitting to using it was enough for them to say no.
Right.
That's absolutely ridiculous. Luckily, at this time, I think we have more of an understanding. This is, unfortunately, an antiquated law that doesn't allow, if you have a drug conviction, there should be some kind of statute of limitations. I mean, 20 years in order to find your missing daughter.
Well, if you can find any rationality in the hysteria around the so-called war on terror, it's approaching the same status as the war on drugs, really.
And then the last little bit of news, Connecticut has come even closer to passing their medical marijuana bill. Governor Jody Rell is struggling to pass the bill because she has mixed feelings about about this bill. The bill cleared the House 89-58 in May and was approved 23-13 in the Senate last Friday. So it just takes her signing it into action. But from what I understand, they may already have a majority rule if she does plan to veto it. Governor Rell said she understands those who fear legalization and that it would send a dangerous message to youth. But
did she elaborate on that dangerous message?
No, just I think it's for the people who are very afraid of scare tactics.
The way I understand it, the message that it would send out is hey kids, smoke grandma's cancer medicine.
Mm-hmm.
It's always
Yeah.
kind of puzzling.
One sure way to make sure the kids want it is to let them know that their grandmother needs it.
Right.
And the kids are going to rush to it right away, right?
Because that will
Sure.
totally affect
Every
you.
developmental psychologist will tell you that.
Right.
That's helpful.
So, but as an excuse and try to get her out of it for the just surmounting amount of support that they've had, she said that maybe it should only be limited to terminally ill patients. But that's just kind of trying to get out of that.
Well, as you say, they've probably got enough votes to override a veto if she does veto. But in a more helpful note, yesterday, 2 members of the New York legislature announced that they would be introducing a medical marijuana bill in New York this year.
Oh, wow.
And while Governor Spitzer has not indicated one way or another, I would say the chances are he would not oppose it. So if New York comes along, that's an awfully big swing in terms of population and influence both.
Has
Right.
the senator from New York spoke out on that?
The senator from New York has not spoken out on it, nor do I expect her to.
I think we'll find her surprisingly quiet on that.
Right. Up until
Yeah,
about
and
2008.
I really can't blame her. It's a polarizing enough issue that I don't really see anyone except Dennis Kucinich voluntarily talking about it during the run-up to a hot election campaign. I know I've thought about this for years, and I think even if I were attending a campaign rally, I would not ask my favorite candidate about it simply because I wouldn't want to put them on the spot right now.
Right.
So,
I think the only time I've seen anything like that is at the Democratic primaries of 2004. Students for Sensible Drug Policy went up to New Hampshire and basically pushed the issue and asked every single candidate what their stance was. And if you asked every single one, most of them did try to wheedle their way out of it.
Certainly.
I think, and it was
Wheedling, good word.
yes.
Yeah, it's a very politicians love to wheedle, but it was specifically about the losing financial aid after a drug conviction. So that was specifically for students, and put in that way. Most politicians said, you know what, I'll have to get back to you on that, and this was on their podium.
Yeah. And I think that's something else. So the reason why politicians have to get back on something like that is the situation's complex enough that I suspect most of them running for president were not even aware of that particular provision of the law, and it certainly wasn't in their briefing book for a debate. So
That's another thing. So then you just go ahead and follow up with, calling their office, sending them the appropriate paperwork or the appropriate information so that they can make a decision, contacting them again. That's it for the news.
well, there's at least one major local story that is indirectly related. The city, a few minutes after midnight last night, received the last volume in the report on the Houston Police Crime Lab. And apparently it was a rather scathing review of the lack of supervision, training, morality, or anything else for about a 20-year period from the early 1980s until 2002. Among other things, it recommended that the state provide DNA retesting for almost 200 cases. These included, I think, 18 who are currently on death row and 10 who have already been executed. I guess if it turns out the DNA results were wrong there, we say sorry about that. But another 200 or so cases in which the recommendation was that the courts work to make sure that the parties affected had testing available to them. This only dealt with the DNA and serology labs. It did not concern drug testing, but the lack of supervision and the lack of process here is so rank that I suspect that it went much further than those two offices anyway. And the point is, the whole criminal justice system needs a whole lot more close attention and oversight than we give it. It's a crucial part of our society. We depend on it in several ways. But if it doesn't work right, and if we can't trust it, then practically speaking, it's worse than not having any at all.
Right. When there's that kind of circular authority, I was looking at an instance where the drug testing was conducted by the parole officers. There was no lab. There was no lab corps that it was sent out to. It was conducted by the probation officers and parole officers in office. That
broke here a week or two ago, and it could lead to a major stink as well. In that, in the parole board, the parole officers themselves, with no training and no oversight, are doing a cheap dip strip test and revoking parole on the basis of a positive report on what amounts to a very, very, very ineffective test. In any other field where these kinds of tests are used, positive results merely lead to additional testing. And what's worse, the parole officers then immediately were discarding the samples and the test strips so that there was no way to check up on them. And this, as I say, broke a couple of weeks ago, and it could amount to a major scandal.
Wow. That's 1 point for Houston. We've got the horrible DNA testing, we have horrible overcrowding, and we're also now going to be renowned for...
Let's don't limit it to Houston. The parole system and the overcrowding are statewide problems.
Also countrywide, California and Santa Barbara County especially are having those kind of problems.
Well, let's turn to our guest tonight. Michael Daleo has been in the business of producing films and videos for about 20 years, primarily for the educational market. Among others, he's got a short film that we'll look at here in a few minutes called Releaf. Good to have you with us, Michael.
Thanks. It's fun to be here. Very interesting.
How did you get off on a subject like Relief, Dinner, Drinks, and a Drug War?
I just picked that title because I thought it was close to your title of your show. Dinner, Drinks, and a Drug War.
Yeah.
Pictured myself being here 4 years later.
Okay.
It's a good subject, and there's a lot of propaganda, as you guys are no doubt aware of, on the subject of medical marijuana, and there's a lot of confusion out there. So I thought it was a very interesting subject from a broad perspective, but there was also some very specific educational points that I was hoping to make, and I wanted to do it with some sense of a comical tone.
Okay.
And I was hoping that we'd capture, the satirical tone of Relief it's quite a comedic counterpoint to most of the propaganda that you're going to see about marijuana in general, be it medical marijuana or just anything else.
I still remember the drug fiends from the old reefer madness days. Sometimes it's hard to satirize what goes on.
Absolutely. Those were fantastic. They're way over the top, completely contrived, and worked fabulously. And it's good propaganda. It's good stuff.
So now we have to recount with the actual counterpoint to this propaganda.
And we have a much more sophisticated viewing audience as well.
Well, I think that's something that I've seen over the past few years, is that on this subject at least, the general audience seems more sophisticated than they were just 5 or 6 years ago.
They certainly are. A little bit more vocal, a little more sophisticated, and it's the subject attracts a lot of heady debate now. Well, it's not so under the table as it used to be.
Right.
And you've actually won several awards for this movie. What are?
It's had some festival play, a few awards, and we've had a few really positive showings locally as well in local theaters. It's only 14.5 minutes long, so you can't get placement in any kind of broadcast environment. It doesn't really fit anywhere, so it's really just an art piece.
Yeah, except for things like this.
Yeah.
Which,
Ideal venue for me. Thank you very much.
yeah. And certainly it's not designed really for theatrical release at this.
It's
this
not
length.
big enough.
Yeah. It's
It's more like dinner, drinks, and a drug war.
gee, that's what it says right here on the promo piece.
You have it as an appetizer.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, why don't we then take a look at least a little bit of the film and then come back and
That's
talk
great.
about it?
I think your audience may recognize a few people in it.
Oh, really? And it was
There's
done
a few-
locally then?
Well, we shot elements here and in California, but
Okay.
a lot of the actors were brought in from California.
Okay.
And there are some faces and names that you'll recognize. And we can talk about them if you recognize them, I guess, after the show.
And you also play a cameo appearance in it, right?
I do, but
Okay.
you won't recognize me.
Okay.
It's very, very sneaky.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's
Well, if
watch.
Steve's got it queued up, why don't we take a look at some of it?
How's that work? Magic?
Matt?
I have no idea.
Josh, explain this.
That's it. That's all I say. I have no idea. Anything I say is going to be wrong. No, thanks, man. Straight from Mexico.
So was it his?
It was in his backpack.
But we don't need to talk about this right now.
He asked me where Josh was in his room, so I
Oh.
told him.
Who wants jello shot?
Right here.
Birthday boy.
Yeah.
We also have cheesecake, June's special cheesecake, and I can make some lemon drop. Yeah.
Cheers.
Hey, Jake.
Yeah. Fix me up a little bit when you're in there.
Yeah. How come none of those Little League pictures, of you and Josh are smiling?
Smiling.
Oh.
Say, you give a kid an inch, take a mile.
Okay.
Hey, get a room.
Take it easy, man. God. Josh is a good kid, and you are, well, kind of an asshole sometimes.
You know, talk to me in a few years when you have kids.
Amen.
Pot is a gateway drug.
Unlike vodka and cigarettes.
Ooh, it's a vodka. Woo! Cheers. Vodka.
Cheers. I'm talking about the hard stuff. Hey, pot makes you lazy. Turns you into a liar and a thief.
Oh.
What kind of pot are you smoking exactly? Because it sounds awful, whatever it is. Come on, man. The laws are much worse than the plan ever was.
Haven't we all smoked pot at some point?
Yeah.
Speak for yourself. Whiskey's just fine for me. Thank you very much.
Come on, it's all the same.
It's not the same. Pot's illegal. I think these drug dealers ought to be hung in the middle of town square.
Anybody? Fresh baked.
Looks like Jake's not the only thing fresh baked around here.
What is the difference between you drinking whiskey and somebody else smoking pot?
I'll tell you the difference.
Please.
Whiskey is made in the USA. Pot is made in, I don't know, Mexico or something. Foreign.
Muy bien, amigo. That's right.
You are a piece of work, TJ. You know what, man? Let me tell you a little story.
Yes.
Do tell.
Story time. Make it a happy story.
I will tell you a happy story about the war on drugs.
Oh.
You know that That old lady who lives next door to me with the glasses.
What now?
Enjoy that salsa. The old lady with the glaucoma.
The lady with glaucoma?
Yeah.
Is that like the girl from Ipanema?
I love that song.
The lady with glaucoma. The lady with glaucoma.
No, y'all are singing. Y'all are singing Guantanamero. No, it would be like.
All right, okay. TJ, thank you. TJ, guys, please. So, the lady with glaucoma. That's right.
No, the lady from Guantanamero.
Yeah, forget it. I'm not going to tell it. Forget it. It's cool.
Come on, I want to hear you justify this.
Yeah, come on, tell us. Erica, sit down. Come on. TJ. Okay, tell us the story.
All right, so the lady with glaucoma.
You talk about Mrs. Cabritas.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Cabritas. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Sweet lady. So she comes knocking on my door, right? And she's wearing those glasses that, bulge your eyes out a little bit. They look kind of funny. Yes, the Magoo thing, I'll give you that. But she asked me if I can give her a ride to go get her medicine because she can't drive anymore. And she can't even find the bus stop because she's totally blind.
Aww.
Yeah.
So you had sex with her?
I'm just kidding, man. Come on.
So I take her to her pharmacy. And guess what?
You couldn't find the KY jelly.
This reminds me of that time that I went to Rite Aid and there were like 7 checkout stands and 1 checker and it took forever.
All right. I get it. Guys, forget the pharmacy. Let's just, 86 pharmacy. Forget the pharmacy. I didn't mention the pharmacy. It doesn't exist. It's a coffee shop. Okay?
Right.
So we're sitting outside and she tells me we need to go in to get her medical marijuana. All right? Her prescription is inside.
Wait, is it medical marijuana?
Yeah, medicinal pot. It helped her with her glaucoma. She had like 9% of her vision.
Really?
Yeah.
So did you go in?
Oh yeah.
Was it all freaky?
Yes, it was freaky. I mean, it wasn't at first, but it got weird.
Well, what did the place look like?
Well, we go in and there's this young girl, cute young girl working behind the counter. Seems normal.
Hi, Mrs. Cabritas. Oh, hi.
And then there's these posters on the wall. I can't even explain it, but we go to the back and there's a guy with dreadlocks reading poetry, and in the very back there's this huge bouncer guy with a sign next to him that says, "You must have a registration card in order to purchase cannabis."
What a scam.
Wait a minute. Is cannabis and pot the same thing?
Yes, very good. Yeah, cannabis, pot, hemp, same plant, except hemp is different than the pot that gets you high.
And how do you know all this, Jake?
Keep up, DJ. Okay, so I'm there with Mrs. Cabritas. Then
I want you to meet Dr. Miguel. Dr. Miguel?
from the back, this kind of funny-looking guy with a goatee comes out, and she says, "This is Dr. Miguel."
Miguel. Sounds like a drug lord.
What is he really a doctor?
Oh, God, who knows? So I asked Dr. Miguel, "Is that a real pot plant?"
Yeah, that's the real pot plant. That's it. This is the plant the government spends billions of dollars a year trying to make go away, even though it grows naturally in just about every state in the union. But they consider it to be very dangerous.
He's shoving the plant in my face and he's shoving it in his face. Wow. Send in the Blackhawks.
Get the Blackhawks!
Send in the Blackhawks. Send in the Blackhawks.
Call in the task force! Send in the task force!
And then he turns around and he's talking to this girl, and on the back of his shirt is all this information about hemp.
Well, like you mean warning, may cause stupidity?
No, that's not what it says. It said, like, hemp is the oldest known agricultural crop.
Evidence of hemp culture dates back over 8,000 years. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were both hemp farmers. 54% of all cancer doctors responding to a survey thought smokable cannabis should be available by prescription.
It said just a bunch of stuff about hemp, none of it dangerous.
Is this Miguel from South America, perhaps?
I thought you said that this place was weird, so where do we get to the weird parts?
Oh, wait, I'm getting to that. I'm standing around all these people, and all of a sudden Dr. Miguel looks at me, and he says,
So, which side are you on?
So what'd you say?
Here's the crazy part. I'm standing there with these guys, and all of a sudden,
You mean like the cops and stuff?
cops. Oh man, not cops. DEA. Big guys in black suits with the masks and the giant guns with the grenade launchers on it.
Everybody, get out! Get out! Get out! Down! Get out!
And women with rubber gloves getting ready to God knows what.
Now you're talking.
Sweet.
So what'd you do?
Oh God! Don't hurt me! Don't hurt me!
Kept my cool. I didn't lose my head. Here comes the really weird part. I'm standing there and I'm handcuffed behind my back and this guy's pushing my face into the wall.
Shut up!
And all of a sudden one of these DEA guys comes up to Mrs. Cabritas and he says,
Huh?
Mom?
Mrs. Cabritas' son was a DEA agent?
Yep.
Did you arrest his mom?
Dude, he cuffed his own mother.
No way. No way.
He arrested his own mother?
That's okay, sweet.
Oh, we enter the crying portion of the drunkenness.
Whee! All right, guys. Erica's out. We're gonna bail. All right.
You know, that will get
Oh,
you 15 years mandatory sentence.
Thank you, TJ. Let's go, honey. Get your jacket.
You want to take
Thanks for dinner, guys. It was
Go
Got a beer.
Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Yeah, we gotta go.
Let's go get your jacket.
You alright?
See you later. Bye, TJ. All right.
Thank you.
Hey, wait a second. You never did finish your story. Did you go to trial?
They came in, took everything, roughed us up, and let us go.
Why?
Why? It's about intimidation, man. They don't want trial.
Whatever happened to Mrs. Cabritas?
Well, she lost her sight because of the trauma. Now she's totally blind. Just like the rest of us. That's a good story, huh?
Night.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
How you feeling? How do you think I feel?
I don't know. All right, son.
Good night.
He's in his room. Check his sister's room, too.
Welcome back. In just a minute, we'll be talking to Michael about the movie we just saw, but I understand first we have Dean Becker on the phone to give us our weekly update. How are you tonight, Dean?
I'm just fine. Buford, I wanted to say hi to your guest, Michael. I think it's wonderful that we get the chance to take a different look at things, and it's so rare that the media or the filmmakers take the time to speak the truth, and I appreciate what Michael's done.
Gosh, thanks a lot, Dean.
Well, you bet, Michael. You know, the thing that comes to mind, I'm tomorrow producing shows for Friday's KPFT radio programs, and the thing we're going to be talking about is use. You know, and I'm a legalizer. I'm for legalizing all drugs, but I've got two authors coming on. Preston Pete, he's written a book, Something in the Way. It's kind of his a story of his life, a lot of it living as a homeless person, as a drug addict, if you will, and his escapades and his journey back to a fairly normal life. And then another one is a gentleman, Wade Agnew. He's an Australian who's written a book, Beating the Hangman, the escapades of a heroin trafficker, kind of the opposite end of things. And both of them talk about the fact that, you know, there were good times, bad times, but most of the bad times came about not because of the drugs necessarily, but because of the fact that they, the encounters with police, the problems with purchasing these overpriced drugs. And I'm even going to include a bit of a mea culpa, if you will, to talk about the fact that in my lifetime I did some 500 hits of LSD, a handful of pills, never did like downers, probably a bucket full of peyote, a bucket full of magic mushrooms, and maybe 30 kilos of marijuana. And in my lifetime, I have excelled at everything I've ever tried to accomplish, whether it started out as a drill press operator rising to machine shop supervisor, whether it was junior auditor rising to project analyst on a $120 million project, and of late putting together these radio programs and exceeding 50 broadcast affiliates in the U.S. and Canada. It is not the drugs necessarily that takes the person down, though there are problems. I don't recommend methamphetamine or too much cocaine. I think that's a bad idea. But the problem is we demonize and destroy users' lives without allowing them to do it for themselves. And I think it's time that we stand up, each and every one of us who uses drugs or did use drugs without all the deleterious effects, and to speak openly about this, to bring about the change, because there are some 100+ million Americans who have used drugs. And it's time we stand for the truth instead of just falling down for the propaganda. If folks would like to hear these programs I'm talking about, this is in Houston on KPFT radio. That's 90.1 FM. It airs on Fridays at 1 o'clock, Century of Lies, and then we have another half hour Friday at 7 p.m., Cultural Baggage. You can learn more about our programs. We have hundreds of programs available online at drugtruth.net, featuring interviews I've conducted with judges, congressmen, scientists, doctors, lawyers, marijuana providers, marijuana patients, and lots of good folks presenting the truth like Mr. Michael Daleo. And I thank you guys for the work you're doing. And Buford, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dean, and we'll be watching and listening to you.
Thank you, sir.
Michael, I've got one question from watching the film.
Okay.
As drunk as those people were when they left the party, did you let them drive home?
We actually shot day for night on that scene, so they walked out into the blazing heat of Texas. So I doubt they got very far.
And they probably weren't actually drunk either, but
no.
But
good acting.
I think to me that has been one of the real tragedies of the drug war, is that we have so come up with this idea of some drugs are demons and some drugs are normal, that most people think that sitting there and slugging down a bottle of wine and then driving home is no big deal. But it kills thousands every year, yet they're scared to death at just a little bit of marijuana.
Or even being near it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it was very poignant that you had them offering up Jell-O shots, and then one of the lines, the character said, "Oh yeah, whiskey, and here's vodka. What's the difference between your whiskey and your son's marijuana?" That was a very poignant statement. And in fact, tying it into celebrities, recently, Bruce Willis said something to the same effect of, he said that we demonize marijuana, whereas alcohol, which contributes to far more deaths per year, and it's advertised in every major sporting event, and every major magazine, television ads, and yet we see that as socially acceptable and not this plant.
Right. It's good, healthy recreation. The people that drink beer are beautiful. Haven't you seen those commercials?
Oh, yeah, and they're always on the beach.
They're gorgeous. And they're in the best places, and they have the best-looking friends.
And none of them have
I would
a
love
body
to see
shape
that
like
girl
mine,
after she's had 6 beers, it's a whole other story, but that's not the side of advertising we're going to see, obviously.
No.
Right.
It's the recreational aspect of it has taken a new twist. I think the hypocrisy is thicker than ever in terms of what would be deemed legal and acceptable and what's not. There are Cialis commercials every 3 or 4 minutes on television, and they're running them on Cartoon Network and other channels where you just think, now, what is their target market? Apparently, it's not older gentlemen 80 and up. It's anybody that can get up to the drugstore and buy it. It's just amazing that recreational drugs are okay
says,
if that's what it's
for a young man looking for a better night out or something like that.
Isn't that interesting? So recreational drugs are perfectly fine.
One of those kind of struck me funny in that it cautioned that one of the side effects of using Cialis or Levitra, one of them was a decrease in vision. And I remember back when I was a kid, one of the youths was, you better not miss ways, you better not do it or you'll go blind. So.
Well, fulfilling prophecy.
Well, and part of it, and I think we see this a lot with teenagers today, is that the pharmaceutical industry has pushed a pill for every purpose so far, with anti-anxiety, anti-depression, everything else that the kids have the idea that if I can find it in the medicine cabinet, it will do something good for me.
I think you can see that with any market, though,
and
from
it won't
anti-anxiety,
necessarily be unsafe either, right? It must be okay.
I mean,
this is a prescription
if
drug.
doctor gave it to my mama, it's bound to be safe.
Things like Zoloft and Prozac have far more reaching advertising budgets than medical marijuana or recreational marijuana or yoga or, deep breathing or something.
Well, of course, that brings to a real crux something else. In order for a drug to be legally marketed in this country, it has to go through the FDA new drug approval process. And right now, the average cost of taking a drug through the new drug approval is somewhere between $500 and $800 million for a single drug.
Right.
Which means
how soon do you think medical marijuana would be FDA approved?
That
regardless of whether the budget is there or not.
The pharmaceutical companies only go with drugs that they have patents on, which means they can be the exclusive marketers and can recover that $500 million directly. There's nothing patentable about marijuana. So there's no one with enough financial stake to put up $500 million.
Especially
to take it through the
a prescription that people can grow themselves, not just in their backyards.
I don't believe that. I'm totally against the whole concept of grow it yourself.
Right. Well, I'm saying the premise is you can potentially, but you can grow tobacco in your backyard.
Yeah.
You can brew beer, homemade beer. You can make your own bootleg moonshine, but I don't suggest you do it and market it.
Well, my point is that at one time in my life, I tried to grow a potted plant. It died. And if you take someone who's facing a terminal cancer, they can't wait 90 days for plants to mature, and they probably don't have the energy and concern to deal with them.
Right.
For it to be effective as medical marijuana.
Well, that's why there are the dispensaries in California.
And they're working on that.
And buy it.
There's a lot of opportunities now. I know that Houston may not have a very cutting-edge dispensary program, but other states certainly do. And they're not only selling the finished product in smokable form, but in edible form. They've even started making drinks, and they've got plants, starter plants, just like you would go to a nursery, because it is a little expensive even at the dispensary. They've got huge
even if you got
legal funds to contribute to. Unfortunately, they're up against the wall. So although they can keep the price somewhat attainable, it is less expensive and easier to manage if you can grow your own garden.
And from what I understand, they're actually able to have different types of clones and crossbreeding in order to alleviate different symptoms. Is that true?
They have done a lot of research in it, and I think now we're talking. When I say they, we're talking about groups in Oakland and San Francisco that are sending their product to the same laboratories that the DEA might use, and getting the same basic chemical breakdown and. You're right. They can get a mother plant, clone that plant, and know that after it's been tested, every clone that comes from that plant will have the same chemical properties, which makes it possible for a doctor to write an accurate prescription. That's the FDA's biggest argument, is that when you're dealing with a plant grown in different climates, different varieties, you can't write a prescription for it because the psychoactive ingredients are going to be different from plant to plant. But that's not true if you base it all on a single mother plant.
Right.
So that's
how much THC is in it, etc.
And it's unquestionable. It is the same, like I said, the same laboratories the DEA or FBI would send their materials to.
Right.
So it's very credible, and it is doable. But it's a small organization trying to do it pretty much for the world right now.
Yeah. The other side to that is that 75, 80 years ago, and I'm sure it's still in their libraries, the FDA had very clear protocols set out in which to prepare approved standardized extracts from plants for all kinds of botanicals. It's not that they can't do the job, it's just they don't want to do the job there. Now, I've been hearing the same things you have, that this particular cross is better for MS and this particular cross is better for glaucoma or whatever. These seem to be kind of experiential choices among people using it. I don't think there's much actual research about which particular mixes of compounds are really specific for a particular disease.
I agree. I don't know that they've assigned it or been able to designate certain properties for certain diseases, but what they have been able to manage is some of the side effects. They can tell you that if you've never smoked marijuana before, then you don't want to start with this variety because it will have a more powerful psychoactive impact on you. So they can help people adjust into using it as medicine in a safe manner. But as far as assigning it to glaucoma versus another ailment, I don't know. But they can tell you that this will really give you the munchies. You're not eating, try this. And they're very helpful, and they're certainly interested in trying, and I would like to see that program expanded. It would just it needs a little more leniency right now from our federal government and state government where Texas is concerned.
Well, I would think with any prescription, not to harp on the subject too much, but with any prescription, regardless of whether it's marijuana or Cialis or Vicodin or something, each individual has different effects.
Absolutely.
So that's the disclaimer caveat there.
Okay, they're telling me it's time for us to take a break, so we'll be back in about a minute or two to continue this discussion.
This week in drug war history, June 1st, 1996. Noted actor and hemp activist Woody Harrelson was arrested and charged with cultivation of less than 5 marijuana plants after he planted 4 industrial hemp seeds in full view of Lee County Sheriff William Kilburn in Lexington, Kentucky. June 3, 1876, at the Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia, America's first 100-year birthday bash, fairgoers visit the Turkish Hashish Exposition and toke up in order to enhance their fair experience. June 8, 1993, William F. Buckley in an interview said, "The amount of money and of legal energy being given to prosecute hundreds of thousands of Americans who are caught with a few ounces of marijuana in their jeans simply makes no sense. The kindest way to put it. A sterner way to put it is that it is an outrage and imposition on basic civil liberties and on the reasonable expenditures of social energy." June 11, 2001, the U.S. Supreme Court rules that the use by the police of a thermal imaging device to detect patterns of heat coming from a private home is a search that requires a warrant. June 13, 1994, the RAND Corporation releases a study finding that drug treatment is 7 times more cost-effective than law enforcement for reducing cocaine use. June 14, 2000, best-selling author, cancer and AIDS patient, and high-profile medical marijuana activist Peter McWilliams is found dead in his Los Angeles, California home. Barred by a federal court order from using marijuana to counteract the extreme nausea caused by his AIDS drugs, McWilliams choked to death on his own vomit slumped on the bathroom floor. His federal prosecutors said they were saddened by his death. June 15, 1998. Random House publishes Mike Gray's Drug Crazy, How We Got Into This Mess and How We Can Get Out. This is Steve Nolan for the Drug Truth Network.
Her discussion with Michael Daleo about his movie Dinner Drinks and the Drug War. In the film we looked at, Michael, the climax was when the DEA raided the dispensary. I understand this is quite a bit of a problem still in California, at least, that the DEA's...
As you know, Prop 215 changed California state law, but it did not change federal law. And from time to time, they like to rattle the cage.
And I think that you probably were right in pointing out that normally no one gets arrested, no one goes to jail. Just all of the marijuana is seized and destroyed, and the place is trashed. And the cash, yes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
They clean up, and usually the slingers are back at it again. Now, where we're at least where California is concerned, right now, they're not raiding or even taunting the people who have city permits. For example, there's 4 dispensaries licensed by the city of Oakland.
I've noticed, though, that several California cities are going through all sorts of local turmoil about whether to permit or not.
Right, and how many permits to let and what qualifies, a provider and things like that. So, and those are all fairly fluid issues, but the concrete fact is, of the several in San Francisco and Oakland that are permitted by the city governments, no one has been harassed. In fact, they usually have city officers working for them on security detail, and you'll find a very safe and comfortable environment there as far as the local officials go.
Speaking of that, you may or may not know, what's the reaction been to the reconviction of Ed Rosenthal in Oakland?
That's one of the more absurd things I've ever seen. I'm not a professor of law, but I could play one right now and talk about that. It's an absurd situation.
I mean, as near as I can tell, the federal government was just throwing money down a rat hole for a grudge match. But I didn't know if it was having any effect or getting any reaction from people.
I think the movement will stand with him. I don't think a jury is going to convict him. I think that's kind of where they're at right now is eventually, if they want to fight the medical marijuana movement, the federal government will have to make an example, if you will, of somebody with a state and city authorized permit to be a dispensary. At that point, they're going to have to round up a bunch of sick people. They're going to get a bunch of people wasting away with AIDS, cancer patients, or any number of serious ailments, and they're going to put them on trial and make the jury decide. Now, I don't think they're going to win that trial, and it's my hypothesis that they know they won't win that trial. So we're kind of at a stalemate. They don't really want to spend the money to go in and try to completely eradicate the medical marijuana movement because they would have to, at some point, risk trial by jury. And they could lose and set a precedent that legalizes marijuana in all 50 states.
It's more than that. as a law professor, I've noticed how very carefully the feds have danced around the line of ever admitting that the words medical and marijuana
even
fit
exist.
together.
That's right. Even though they do still make synthetic marijuana.
The thing is,
well, they actually make real marijuana for the 8 patients that have been granted other causes.
We have videotape. We have some footage of that too. Another video.
But I think the real thing they're facing is that they run the risk with the research that's been done and published now, that if they really get hard-nosed about going to a jury trial, they're going to find that their statute gets overturned as being without a reasonable basis. I think we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Thank you. I've only been listening for a few minutes, and I just have a really quick question. With a farm bill coming here soon, I'm wondering what role this might play in America's future, horticulturally speaking.
You can make gas from hemp.
Okay. Go ahead.
Biodiesel fuel.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very practical, but although I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon either, it's practical.
Yeah. Is he referring to the Kentucky hemp bills, or are there other hemp bills that he's referring to?
I don't know. There are several states that don't believe Texas has one currently.
I don't think so, but I think one was actually passed. Yeah. Not Kentucky, but
yeah.
It would surprise me if Kentucky didn't follow suit.
Well, it's the leading. Kentucky, I believe, already has a hemp bill.
I thought they did.
Because I believe it's the leading cash crop in Kentucky now. But hemp's a great source for biodiesel.
Absolutely.
Much more reasonable source of fuel than ethanol.
Yes.
It's another case where everyone's jumping on board the booze and forgetting what the hemp would do for them.
They should be making fuel out of pot and whiskey out of corn. I don't know how this country got that screwed up, but that's how we started. And
and
made
the
perfect sense to the founding fathers.
Not only is the ethanol out of corn inefficient and expensive, it's already affecting food markets because price competition is driving up the price of food grain and animal food.
That's inevitable.
I mean, of all of the possible bio choices for fuel, that to me looked like the least plausible one to begin with. We're getting somewhat afield here, but we had New Mexico join medical marijuana this year. Vermont renewed theirs, which had an expiration date tied to it. Connecticut's waiting to see what their governor will do. There is a petition circulating in, I believe it's Wisconsin, or is it Michigan?
Sure.
But to do it by referendum after their legislature failed to act on a bill. Does it look like maybe the momentum is starting to tilt more for grassroots pressure up on the federals instead of just working from D.C. down?
I would love to say yes, but I would probably say we're still stagnating in that same situation where people, as long as the government's not coming after them, they tend to be complacent. You know, and right now, apparently marijuana is plentiful. They can get pot whether they're sick or not. You know, kids can get pot easier in a middle school to high school than they can get alcohol.
Yeah.
So apparently there's not a great impetus for them to get vocal about it. I don't see the grassroots movement moving at a very fast pace. I would love to see people. I'd like to see that phone ringing off the wall and requests for the video to be played more often. I would like to see that. And I think where we've seen that really get traction is only in the places where certain groups have been vocal enough to get a bill passed with their state government and get the local government on board and really dig in their heels and say, we're here now, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And that first step is it's a tough step. And in Texas, it's maybe tougher than most.
Well, in Texas,
we've got 14 states already that have passed some kind of medical marijuana legislation, and that's 20% of the country, essentially. I'm thinking when we have 40 to 50% on board, perhaps then Texas has a chance. We've already had amazing strides. This last legislative session, our medical marijuana bill had 3 authors, one of which was a Republican and 2 of which were on the Public Health Committee which was in which the bill was heard, the committee in which it was heard. So we're making strides, but you're absolutely right. More people need to be pushing, this idea that you're not going to get, you can be complacent or you can push further.
And if you're not for any sort of legalization in a broad sense, you can just at least say, I'm not for my tax dollars being spent on spraying crops of marijuana in Mexico, Colombia, Peru. I'm not for 15-year mandatory sentencing. There's just
and the Supremes are going to look at the cocaine sentencing disparity finally. Michael, thank you for being with us tonight.
It's been fun.
Before we leave, I'd like to leave you with a final thought that here it goes again. Yesterday, 3 members of the National Guard were arrested in El Paso for corruptly conspiring to help smuggle illegal aliens across the border. Now, prohibition laws are prohibition laws, and it doesn't matter if you're prohibiting drugs or people. That as long as what you're doing is interfering with the balance between supply and demand in a market, you cannot build a wall high enough or strong enough to stop the traffic. All you can do by imposing restrictive prohibitory laws is drive up the price, drive up the violence, and drive up the corruption. If you love the way the Border Patrol has been the most corrupt law enforcement agency in this country because of drugs, then let's just wait and see what ICE looks like if we really try to seal the border to people as well as drugs. And if you think one truckload of people being fried to death in the back of a truck in Texas a couple of years ago was horrible, wait until it starts happening weekly. Prohibition never works. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for being with us, Michael.
My pleasure.
And just remember this, those people in the legislature and the Congress work for you. Only if they hear from you, only if you tell them what to do, can they act properly. So if you feel strongly about any of the issues we talk about, the people to talk to are those that you have elected, and more important, that you can unelect. So it's time to draw another evening to a close. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Thank you again for being with us as always.
Thank you for watching Drugs, Crime, and Politics from Drug Policy Forum of Texas. So now since they're rolling the credits, we have to,
We're still talking?
Mm-hmm.
I did real didactic. Let me do this.